If you're thinking of buying a Chrome OS computer, whether that's a Chromebook or a Chromebox, then this essential Chromebook buying guide is for you. First of all, you might be asking yourself, what is Chrome OS? Chrome OS is an operating system that was designed and maintained by Google. It's a very secure operating system, and there's three main reasons why it's become so successful. The growth in Chromebook sales was 287% last year, so that's a huge growth in sales, and that's not just in the USA, that's around the world. So they are becoming very, very popular. And the reason for that is that Chrome OS has three key selling points, and that's that it's fast, it's secure, and it's easy to use. So first of all, if we look at how fast it is, when I say it's fast, once you've turned on your Chromebook or your Chromebox, it takes about 2 seconds to get to the logon screen, and then once you put in your login details, it takes about 5 seconds to get to the desktop, and from there you're ready to go. There's no waiting around for the operating system to catch up on itself. It's there and you can use it straight away. So you could open up Chrome and start surfing the internet and you won't have any lag. And it's not just that as well, that speed is obviously fantastic, but the good news is that never deteriorates over time. So that speed will be the same whether you've had your Chromebook for 2 weeks, 2 years, 5 years, it won't make a difference. That speed, that initial speed that you got will always be the same. Now, if you're used to using other computers, you've most likely experienced a situation where they're fast at the beginning, but then they deteriorate over time. It's really good news that you just don't get that with Chrome OS. The next one is that it's secure. Now, obviously that's really important in today's world where most of us use the internet when we're using our computers, and the internet unfortunately is full of undesirables, and that means we get viruses and malware. That's something you want to try and protect yourself from. The good thing about Chrome OS, it is without question the most secure operating system for the consumer. Now, the main reasons for that is that the operating system is closed, so you can't import another operating system. Say for example you went to a website and that website contained viruses. That the browser that you're on, and it's not just the browser, it's the tab. So when you've got a browser, you can open up multiple tabs. If you're on there and there is unfortunately a virus, that virus cannot infect a Chrome OS computer because you can't install programs directly from a browser. Also, it's sandbox, so even if that browser did contain a virus, it can't communicate with any other parts of the operating system or any of the other programs that you've got open, and that's the reason why it is so secure. The other reason why it's secure is that every time you boot up your Chrome OS computer, it will check the operating system to see if any changes have been made. It won't have been the case that there would have been changes made because it's very, very difficult to do so. But it would check, and if there was a change, it would just wipe it and start again. And that's the beauty of the Chromebook when it comes to security. It means you can surf online without being worried about any threats. And it also means you don't need to buy antivirus software because it's all installed into Chrome OS. You won't see it happening, it all happens in the background. Also, Google makes sure they keep it on top of the updates, and the updates are not just to give you new functionality of the operating system, it's also to deal with any security flaws, and they happen every 6 weeks, and they're getting even shorter now, which is really good news. So as long as your Chromebook is continuing to receive updates, then you'll be safe surfing online and using any of the programs you can use on the Chromebook. And the last one is that it's easy to use. It is really easy to use. If you've used a Microsoft computer or Apple computer, obviously it will take you a little time to adjust to how Chrome OS works, but once you've used it for a few days, you will see how simple it is to use. It's great, and that's technology needs to be that way. For further technology advances, it shouldn't make technology harder to use, it should make it easier to use, and that's what Chrome OS does. They're the three key selling points. It's fast, it's secure, and it's easy to use. So that explains Chrome OS. Then it comes on to the different types of Chrome OS computers. You've most likely heard of the Chromebook. All that means is the Chromebook is a laptop. So when you have a Chromebook, it's a laptop that runs Chrome OS. If you don't want a laptop, there's the Chromebox, and that's a desktop PC, and it's much smaller than you would get with a traditional desktop PC, so it doesn't take up much room on your desk. I have both. I've got a few Chromebooks and I've got a Chromebox. I love them all. They're all different. It depends on what you want. So they're the two different ones you can get, the Chromebox and the Chromebook. The Chromebox isn't as well known as the Chromebook, but it's just as good. The difference is it is just a desktop PC. So you buy your separate monitors, your separate keyboard and your separate mouse, whereas a Chromebook, it all comes together in one package. Then if we look at the Chromebook, there's different type of Chromebooks to buy. So you can get either a laptop based Chromebook, and that just means you can use it as a laptop, or you can get a hybrid Chromebook. Now a hybrid Chromebook is a laptop that you can use as a laptop, but the display spins around 360 degrees, so you can also use it as a tablet as well. And depending on what you want to do, you may want to decide whether a laptop's more convenient or a hybrid Chromebook's more convenient. The good thing about the hybrid Chromebooks is that they're touchscreen. Don't get me wrong, you can get some normal Chromebook laptops that are touchscreen, but with a hybrid, because it's a tablet, it obviously needs to be touchscreen. And you do get a few as well that has stylus support. The last one is a Chrome OS 2-in-1 tablet device, also known as a detachable Chromebook. How that works is it's a tablet, which can be used as a tablet on its own, but you can also attach a keyboard to it, and then you can use it as a laptop as well. So they're the three main different type of Chromebooks you can get: just a laptop, or a hybrid Chromebook, or a 2-in-1 detachable Chromebook. The good news is that you can get a Chromebook to suit all budgets. You can buy a really cheap Chromebook, a budget Chromebook, and when I say really cheap, I'm talking under £200, $200, or you can get a really expensive Chromebook up to £1,000, $1,000 and over. But then the medium range, medium spec ones are the ones that are more popular, and they can range from anything from £400 up to around £600, £700. The one you will want will obviously depend on what you want to get from your laptop. You need to understand, obviously, if you're going to buy a budget Chromebook, it's not going to have the same capability of a medium spec Chromebook. So we'll go through this main differences that you'll see between buying a budget Chromebook and a medium spec Chromebook. So with a budget Chromebook, what you'll most likely see is that the display will range from 11.6 up to about 14 inches. That's mostly the display sizes you'll see. Hopefully, if it's a 14-inch, you'd want it to have full HD, but being that it's a budget Chromebook, some of them may only have standard definition. Standard definition on a 14-inch display isn't going to look that great. However, on the 11.6-inch display, and a lot of budget Chromebooks come with an 11.6-inch display, none of them will have full HD. That isn't really an issue. You wouldn't be able to get them at that price. They'll all have standard definition, but standard definition resolution on an 11.6-inch display looks fine. There's no issue with that at all. When it comes to the processor on a budget Chromebook, you're most likely going to see an Intel Celeron or a MediaTek processor. They're low spec processors, but the good news is that Chrome OS doesn't need much processing performance to work. Obviously that will depend on what you want to do, which we'll go over. But if you are buying a budget Chromebook, expect to see that it will have a Celeron or a MediaTek or any other type of budget processor. When it comes to the RAM with a budget Chromebook, 4GB of RAM is what you'd expect to see. I divide 2GB. It's very unlikely you'll get many 2GB Chromebooks nowadays. If you do, it will still work, but ideally you want to look for 4GB of RAM. Now 4GB of RAM may not seem a lot if you've used other computers on different operating systems, but 4GB of RAM on a budget Chromebook is absolutely fine. You won't have any issues with performance. Obviously, it's not going to perform as good as a medium spec Chromebook, but it will still perform well depending on the type of task that you'll be doing. When it comes to storage on a budget Chromebook, you'd expect you may get some with 16GB, but less likely nowadays. Most are either 32GB or 64GB. 32GB is fine, 64GB is obviously double, so you can store double the amount of storage. Again, with Chromebooks, you don't have as much storage you would get with a Microsoft Windows computer, for example, which could have 500GB, even terabytes of storage, but that's because you don't need it with a Chromebook. Most of what you do on a Chromebook is on the internet, so you don't install programs as such, so you don't really need the storage. Also, you can store most of your files in the cloud using Google Drive, so that saves up your local storage. So when it comes to local storage, what would you really use that for? The two main reasons are, first of all, the operating system, Chrome OS, which is what you need to run the computer. And secondly, if the Chromebook supports Android apps, and most of them do today, you would install Android apps locally. So you can't install Android apps externally, it would all be used on your local storage. So the idea is that you save most of your files in the cloud, and then your storage, whether it's the 32GB or 64GB, you can use to install Android apps. Even with 32GB of storage, you could still install 10, 15, even 20 Android apps without any issues. Obviously, it depends on the type of Android apps you use because they all take up different storage space. The good news is no Chromebook comes with a hard disk with moving parts, what you may get with other computers. They're all solid disks, so you don't have the noise of the fan, you don't have moving parts, so that's all good. Most Chromebooks, not all Chromebooks, are fanless in design. Most budget Chromebooks are fanless in design because the processor doesn't need a fan to operate. When it comes on to capabilities of a budget Chromebook and what you'd expect to do with a budget Chromebook, mainly it will be used for surfing the internet, and most of us today, that's all we do with our laptops, we just surf the internet. So that's online shopping, holidays, using YouTube videos, social media, anything like that is absolutely fine. When it comes to productivity, you'll be able to use word processors, spreadsheets, everything like that is absolutely fine on a budget Chromebook. Android apps, most Android apps will work on a budget Chromebook, but you will have to obviously look. It depends on the type of app you're looking at. If it's really advanced, maybe a really advanced graphical game, Android game, that may struggle. It possibly would still work, but it may take a lot longer to load, but you would have to look into that. The price for budget Chromebooks, you can get one, believe it or not, I saw one for £129, brand new, which is quite shocking. It was a very cheap budget laptop Chromebook, so that's how cheap they can get. In America, I think the same Chromebook was about $159, so that's how cheap they can get. But budget Chromebooks tend to range from that price up to around £300, $300, maybe $350, $350. Anything above that, then you're most likely going into the medium-spec Chromebooks. And that brings us on to medium-spec Chromebooks. Medium-spec Chromebooks can do all of what we've discussed, but they can do a bit more than that as well. Obviously, first of all, they will be faster, they'll perform faster, they'll be better for multitasking. So if you like to have a lot of windows open at once, it's going to perform better if it's a medium-spec Chromebook. Also, Android apps, you're not going to have any issue with any of the apps, as in like if it's a budget Chromebook, some of them may not perform very well. With a medium spec Chromebook, they'll be able to cope with Android apps, no problem. Also, you have Linux now on Chromebook. It was in beta mode for a long time, but it's now out of beta mode, and you can install Linux. When you install Linux, that then allows you to install Linux programs and Linux apps. Linux is a very secure operating system. Chrome OS is based on the Linux operating system, and that's why it's so secure. Linux has been around for many years, and there's many different packages you can use on Linux. For example, they've got their own Office Libre, for example, which is word processor, spreadsheet program, database program, and you can install that all locally on your Chromebook. So with Linux apps, you install them locally, just like you do with Android apps. Therefore, when it comes to medium spec Chromebooks, you would want to ensure that there's more storage. So 64GB is the minimum. You can install quite a lot with 64GB. I've got a 64GB Chromebook, and I've happily installed many of Android apps and a few Linux apps without any issues whatsoever. But then if you are going medium spec, if you can get 128GB, then that would be a better option if you're going to be using a lot more Linux apps. You can obviously get more than that as well if that's what you would like. When it comes to the processor, you wouldn't expect a medium-spec Chromebook to have an Intel Celeron or a MediaTek. You'd expect it at a minimum to have an Intel M3 processor. Performs perfectly fine. That's the lowest spec medium type of processor you would see. I've had a Chromebook with an Intel M3 and it works absolutely fine with no problems whatsoever. You'd get an Intel M5, then you'd move into Intel i3, Intel i5 and Intel i7. Intel i7 being the fastest, i5 still being very fast but slightly slower, and Intel i3. When you're going into them processors, they can perform everything you can currently do on a Chromebook. They'll work fine with Android apps and they'll work fine with Linux apps as well. When it comes to the RAM, you will get some medium spec Chromebooks with 4GB, and again, they will work perfectly fine because Chrome OS doesn't really need it. One thing I would say though, if you are going to be buying a medium spec Chromebook, if you can get one with 8GB, it's a better option for you because it would mean it's more future proof. Also, if you're using an Intel i3 processor, for example, with 4GB of RAM, that 4GB of RAM is going to hold that processor back because the processor can cope with lots, but the RAM isn't able to cope with as much. So if you're going to go medium spec, although 4GB is absolutely fine and your performance will be fine, you will get faster performance if you go for 8GB of RAM. When it comes to the display, again, you don't get many medium spec Chromebooks with 11.6. They tend to be a bit larger, around the 12.5 upwards. Again, you can get laptops, you can get hybrids and detachables. At the moment, you don't get medium spec detachables. There is a couple that's just come out, but they've been more of the lower range, but we will see more detachables, medium spec Chromebooks in the future. There is of course the Pixel Slate, which was launched a few years ago, which is more higher spec detachable Chromebook. When it comes to the display on a medium spec Chromebook, I would expect it to have full HD. I don't think you should be having a standard definition display on a medium spec Chromebook, even if the display is very small. For example, 12.5 inches on the Asus C302, which was a very good Chromebook a few years ago. It's been replaced now by newer Chromebooks, but that had full HD on a 12.5 inch display, and that's what I would expect. With a medium spec Chromebook, you would want full HD. Another thing you would expect to see on a medium spec Chromebook is an IPS panel. A lot of the budget spec Chromebooks have a TN panel. Now, a TN panel is still fine to use, but the quality isn't as good as an IPS panel. IPS panel gives much better viewing angles. So if you're not looking at your laptop directly on with a TN panel, for example, if you tilt it a bit, you'll struggle to see what's on the display. IPS, you don't have that problem. Also, IPS gives much more vivid colours, true to life colours. It just looks better. Now, some questions you may have about Chrome OS, because I've seen it on many retailer sites, is can you use things such as MS Office, Microsoft Office? That's understandable because Excel is a great program. I've used it for many years and it is a fantastic spreadsheet program. You can use Microsoft Office on a Chromebook, but you need to bear in mind the way we use computers is changing. So Microsoft, you can still buy a Microsoft Office program that you can install locally on your PC, Microsoft Windows PC, but they're moving away from that and everything is moving to the cloud, subscription-based services, and that's what you would be doing if you had it on Chrome OS. So with Chrome OS, if you want to use Microsoft, you would just need to visit their website, you would pay a subscription fee, and then you would access Word, Excel, PowerPoint directly from your browser, and that's where we go in the future of computing. Now, you may think a subscription fee is frustrating because you're not just paying a one-off fee, but then when you consider, I think the subscription fee is around $6 a month. That may sound like a lot, but even over a 2-year period, I think that would still work out cheaper than an Office program that you paid for to install locally. Also, programs that you install locally, they will run out. So Office 2010, if you've got Office 2010, It's quite an old Office program to be using. If you're using cloud-based Office, it's always up to date. So that's the benefits of that. So you can use my MS Office on a Chromebook, but as I said, you don't install these programs locally. It's all done in the cloud. But you don't need to worry. You don't need to use MS Office. Google have their own Office suite, and that includes a word processor, a spreadsheet program, a PowerPoint type slide program, which works great. I've used it quite a lot. And there's other programs they've got as well. And all these are cloud-based. They're designed to work for you with your Chromebook seamlessly, and they do. So if you don't want to spend money on Microsoft Office, you don't need to worry, because there is a Google Office suite available. It's free to use, and you can save files locally, or the best thing to do, and it works really well with Office, the Google Office suite, is to save it to Google Drive. Google Drive you get free with your Chromebook, because to use a Chromebook you need a Google account, and a Google account comes with 15 gigabyte of Google Drive, so that's cloud storage for free, which is absolutely great. And if you do need to get extra storage, I pay about £1.59 extra for 100 gigabyte of storage. That's really good value. Something else that you may have heard of is, can you play games on the Chromebook? You can obviously play Android app games, so yes, you can play them games. A few years ago, if you asked me whether you could play Microsoft PC style games on your Chromebook, I would say no. I can't imagine that would ever happen, because you need to have a graphics card. I was proven wrong, which I'm very, very happy about, because GeForce NVIDIA now, I'm sure you've heard of NVIDIA, they do graphics cards for PCs. They have a GeForce NVIDIA Now service. You can subscribe to that service. It's about £6, $6 a month. And then as long as you've got games, say, which you've bought via Steam or Ubisoft or other software manufacturers, if you bought the games from them, you can play them games directly in the cloud. So to do that, you wouldn't actually need to have a very powerful Chromebook. Even some budget spec Chromebooks will work fine, because all the processing power is done online on the servers at NVIDIA. So the graphics card, that you're using a graphics card on the servers. And this is no word of a lie. One of my favorite games is Anno 1800. If you've ever played it, you'll know how intensive it is. When I used to play that on my Microsoft Windows PC, Intel i3 with a 6 gigabyte NVIDIA GTX 1060, I think, graphics card, it struggled. It did struggle when I developed the game. It did struggle. I don't get that with NVIDIA GeForce Now, so it's great. The only thing I would say about NVIDIA GeForce Now is you do need to have a solid internet connection, because you are streaming the game from their servers. So yes, you can even play PC style games, well, PC games, on your Chromebook or Chromebox. When it comes to playing games, I prefer to play them on my Chromebox, because I've got a much larger display, but you can play them on your Chromebook as well. You've also got Stadia, which is Google's own service, and that is for the same thing. But it's more console style games, and you can play console games on your Chromebook as well. So the days of not being able to play games on the Chromebook and Chrome OS devices in general is over. You can now. Also in the future, we will most likely be able to start playing games locally. Now that is still developing, and that is something that Steam's developing. They're developing a Linux app for Steam, which will mean you'll be able to start playing games locally. I've done it a few years ago, didn't work well. I know it works much better now, and I know they're still working on how you get the app to use all of the hardware of the Chromebook without it having an impact on security, and it's all about that. And also at the moment, Chromebooks and Chromeboxes don't have graphics cards, so that's something they would look at. So in the future, I'm sure you will be able to play PC games locally as well, but at the moment, NVIDIA GeForce Now, not all games are available, but I quite regularly play games on my Chromebox using NVIDIA GeForce Now, and that's games that I've bought at Steam previously, and also games that I bought from Ubisoft previously. So some other things you might need to consider are the ports and connections. With a Chromebox, you get quite a few. You'd expect to see USB Type A, some of them, and you would hope to have USB Type C. You would hope to have HDMI ports as well, so you can connect displays, external displays on a Chromebox. With a laptop, you would hopefully get a USB-A and a USB Type-C, but that does depend on the Chromebook you're looking for. So if you've got USB-A peripherals, which are older hardware, and the Chromebook you're looking at has USB Type-C, you would have to buy an adapter. So if you don't want to have to mess about with adapters, make sure you look at the type of ports you've got available on the Chromebook or the Chromebox that you're considering. Something else also is battery life. One of the great things about the Chromebook is battery life. The battery life on a Chromebook is far superior to any other laptop you will get out there. And the main reason for that is that Chrome OS is a very lightweight operating system. It doesn't use performance as much. It's performed perfectly well, but it just doesn't use up your battery as much. Obviously, it will depend. If you've got a budget Chromebook with an 11.6-inch display, that's going to last for a long time, and I'm talking about 13 hours. And that's because the display doesn't need much power to run, and the processor doesn't need much power to run, and the type of things you'd be doing on a budget Chromebook doesn't need much power to run. When you start going to medium spec, you still get good battery life. I would suggest mainly 7 to 10 hours. That's still really good. 7 hours of battery life compared to a Microsoft Windows computer with an external hard drive that moves, for example, you possibly get 5 hours, and it's that deterioration over time that you get with other computers. You don't get that with the Chromebook. I've still got a Chromebook that I bought in 2015, and the battery life is still great today. So the only other thing we need to discuss is, like I said, the Chrome OS operating system is updated regularly by Google, and that's to keep it secure and to provide you with new functionality. When you buy a Chromebook, it will have an AUE date. The AUE date is how long it will receive updates for. If you buy a brand new Chromebook today from new, you would get an AUE date of 8 years. So that would mean that Chromebook would still receive updates for a whole 8 years. After them 8 years, the Chromebook will no longer receive updates. So if you're looking at buying a second-hand Chromebook, or even if you are looking at buying a new Chromebook, but that Chromebook's been on the market for a few years, you may want to check the AUE date to see when it stops receiving updates. Just like mobile phones do. If you buy an Android phone, it will receive updates for a few years and then it will stop receiving updates. It's still perfectly fine to use, but obviously after the updates, it may not be as secure. You'd have to look at other ways how you could use that Chromebook. But to be fair, 8 years for a laptop, that's a very long time. So I hope that video helped. I think we've covered everything we needed to do, and I've tried to do it as quickly as possible because I appreciate time is valuable. I hope that has given you everything you need to know before buying a Chromebook. If it did, please like and subscribe to the channel, because if you do buy a Chromebook, you'll want to subscribe to the channel because I've got plenty of videos on how to use your Chromebook and how to get the most out of your Chromebook or Chromebooks. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy your Chrome OS device.